Hello, my name is Anna Garcia, and welcome, fellow delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to be here today, and I want to ask you a question. What if, in the United States, you weren't allowed freedom of speech? If you couldn't state what you believe in, what race, what ethnicity you are, you couldn't say if you're gay or lesbian, and what if all of that was ripped from you? Well, I'm a representative of Human Human Rights Watch, and I've been investigating alleged abuses of the constitutional rights in Jordan, and I'm here to convince you that Jordan is denying its basic constitutional rights of giving its citizens the freedom of speech. The first, if we were to use economic sanctions against Jordan, they would lose about $1.5 billion. The first story I want to tell you guys about is about a Jordanian blogger that was stabbed because she criticized a member of the royal family, Prince Hassan. He made a comment about protesters, and so she blogged that about her blog, and so this man just went up to her and stabbed her in the stomach and said, "If you don't stop, I'm going to kill you." And just because she criticized a member of the royal family. And even journalists and like newspaper articles and people are watched by the intelligence agencies. Are watched what they say about the government, because they say one thing about the government does something to them. The second story is about the Jordan authorities are suppressing free speech. There's this lady named Jamel Mustafa, and her brother. Sahar and Mustafa, and they're charged for subverting the system because they wrote an article about the government, and so they took them into jail, but the girl was bailed for $5,000, but the prosecutor held on to her brother for 14 extra days. And Christoph Wilke, HRW, senior Middle East researcher, said Jordan cannot claim to be making democratic reforms while prosecutors hunt down journalists doing their job. They're doing their job about telling what's going on in the government, but they beat them up and do all this stuff to them. Our third story is about on April 3rd, 2012, policemen beat 30 protesters because they were protesting about these 7 other protesters that went and protested, and they want these 7 protesters to get out of jail. And so they were shouting, if the people are scorned, the regain will fall. O King Abdallah, O King Abdallah, a Jordanian will not be scorned. And so the police warned them, and then the police comes out and starts beating them violently. They took all 30 of them into a van and beat them and insulted them, and they freed some of them, but they kept 13 of them. One of them was an old man, and they beat him so hard in the shoulder that he fainted. He could barely walk. Imagine that if that was your grandpa or your uncle that could barely walk and they beat him up. There was another guy, a youth leader of movement leader. The guards ordered him to strip naked, and he refused, and so they beat him up really hard, and they banged his head against the wall for 10 minutes until he too fainted. And the Human Rights Organization wants to do an economic sanitation to Jordan because, like I said in the beginning, they would lose about $1.5 billion. And like I said in the beginning, a Jordanian blogger was stabbed in the stomach just because she criticized a member of the royal family. Second, they're suppressing the freedom of speech about, like, they can't say anything about the government. Third, they ordered a guy to strip naked, and they hit an old man just because they went and protested. And we need to make a change in Jordan because all of this is just wrong that they're doing this. They said in the constitutional that they have the freedom of speech, but in reality they don't. You guys need to come and sign so we can make a change in the people's lives of Jordan. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Caleb King, and I would like to begin by thanking the General Assembly for their time and attention. I am here today to address the discrimination of not only gays, but domestic workers and blacks. In the majority of our countries, you see these kinds of people walking down our streets, going into our businesses, and you may even have friends that belong to these groups. For a moment, put yourself or your friends in the situation of being persecuted, attacked, or even publicly humiliated for being who you are. I'm a representative of the Human Rights Watch organization, and I have been investigating the alleged abuses of the constitutionally guaranteed rights in the country of Lebanon. My goal today is to prove to you that Lebanon is denying a basic constitutional right that is promised its people, and to encourage you to restrict its economic sanctions. Let's consider the right that is being abused: equality. They will equally enjoy. Article 7 of Lebanon's constitution states, all Lebanese are equal before the law. They will equally enjoy in civil, political rights, and are equally bound by public obligations and duties without any distinctions. This right has been denied blatantly to the gays, domestic workers, and to the blacks of Lebanon. My first piece of evidence comes from the website www.bbc.cu.uk. This story brings to the light the humiliating anal exams of gay men. According to the article, there was a police raid on a cinema on August 7th. The officers claimed that it was a gay house. There was 36 people arrested, and all of them were forced to get an anal examination by a doctor at the police station. Although several doctors said that this test proved nothing, and the Justice Minister, Shakib Kourbawi, wrote a letter to the Prosecutor General about the exams, but they still continue to humiliate many. My second piece of evidence comes from the website www.newyorktimes.com. The article describes the ongoing abuses of immigrant domestic workers. There's been an estimated 200,000 reports that have been ignored. Reports about workers being locked in their workplaces, withheld paychecks, confiscated passports, and back-breaking hours have been ignored. One woman, Alan Chassis, an immigrant domestic worker, committed suicide after being abused by her employer. Any efforts to make laws protecting domestic workers are slow to gain momentum. And many employers claim that the abuse is because of them protecting their money. They complain that the price to bring the immigrants to Lebanon for work is expensive, and that the business should be reformed and be monitored daily. My final piece of evidence comes from the website www.dailystar.com. This article tells a story of a girl who was was teased by the color of her skin. Magyeda was on a school playground and with a group of kids ganged up on her and bullied her. They called her ugly, telling her that her skin would dirty their hands, and they even hit her till it broke all of her teeth. This went on for a long time. Her mother has stated that she came home crying and hungry because the kids would steal all of her food. And when the abuse was reported to the principal, he did nothing to the kids that was abusing. They made different schools just for blacks in Lebanon, and if they wasn't entered into a public school, then they were bullied to an extent where they couldn't even go. And all this evidence leads to the fact that Lebanon has failed to protect the right of equality for its people. The examination of gays, the abuse of innocent immigrant workers, and the abuse of black-skinned citizens. This cannot be ignored any longer. This requires immediate action. I encourage you to be involved and contribute to the economic sanctions against Lebanon. Put yourself in their shoes and picture you or anyone else having to live through this day to day. Please don't be the one to stand in the way of the rights of the innocent humans who try to live like everyone else. Thank you once again for your time and attention.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the United Nations. Thank you so much for having me today and listening to our cause. It is such an honor to be speaking in front of you. Today, I'll be talking about how Saudi Arabia has defied its country of the constitutional law of due processes. This has not just happened once, but it has happened over 2,000 accountable times. We as Americans has been guaranteed these laws, but these countries have not been guaranteed these laws, such as us. They've been disrespected, abused by their government for not even being let to do this. We have come here to prove that Saudi Arabia has been violating this constitutional law. I am hoping to achieve economic sanctions. Let's consider our first example of in August, a judge of Tabuk in Tabuk, a judge considered surgical paralyzation to a man after accidentally paralyzing another man in a fight 2 years earlier. This case was a violation of the constitutional law and cruel of unusual punishment, and also of due processes. I guess you could consider the law a matter of opinion, but I don't believe that this punishment is justified. Another example is on April 2011, a council of senior religious scholars were convicted because of the evidence that they supposedly found of them violating Sharia law. They were not allowed a court date until 2 years. The lawyer not
You're okay.
sorry.
It's okay.
This is they were not even given the true reason of why they were arrested or sent to court. On August 2nd, 2003, Mr. Aram al-Bathmith was the age of 40. The secret agency of Saudi Arabia burst into his workplace, shot him and abused him. They threw him in the back of an ambulance and interrogated him for at least 1 year. After the interrogation was allowed to finally see his family. Still is in prison till now. He doesn't even have a court date yet. As I have said earlier, the right of due process has begun to violating the countries of Saudi Arabia is a big problem, and to give the invalid with this happening in America. Once again, I thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak in front of you as great leaders today. It has been such an honor.
Thank you, delegates and chairman, for allowing me to speak today. Imagine being tortured in ways not just causing physical damage, but mentally scarring damage. Here in America, in our Constitution, we are protected from being tortured and having cruel, unusual punishments. I am a representative of the Human Rights Watch, and I have been investigating alleged abuses of constitutionally guaranteed rights in the country of the United Arab Emirates. My goal for speaking here today is to gain alliances to put economic sanctions on the UAE as a punishment for violating the rights that they said that they would give their people. People in the UAE are getting tortured for reasons they do not know. There have been multiple accounts of this kind of torture, but today I have 3 accounts that have been the all-time attention of the press. Our first account is an innocent man by the name of Abdullah al-Jadani. He was abducted and tortured by my organization notified me of this horrible incident. Al-Jadani was blindfolded and driven to a small prison cell where he was beaten and whipped for 18 days. He was hung from a wall and was put in painful positions. He was sleep deprived and subjected to the cold. He said that he overheard the men that had abducted him, that they had brought him to the state security facility. Also, one of his friends, Musab Kalali Aboud, was tortured in solitary confinement for 3 months. The judge would not clarify why either one was confined. This is going completely against what the UAE had promised to their people. A man by the name of Naji Hamdan was accused of practicing terrorism and was tortured by law enforcement in prison for 3 months. YNetNews.com says that Hamdan signed a document so the beatings would stop. He denied the charges of terrorism, and he confessed that he was beaten in prison. The Constitution says that no person shall be subjected to torture or to degrading treatment. It also says physical and moral abuse of an accused person is prohibited. So even if Hamdan was guilty, he still should not have been subjected to such torture and abuse. What really disturbs me and my colleagues is when the sheik or a profound leader was involved in this type of torture. According to CNN.com, a grain dealer was beaten by a sheik. There was video proof and a trial, but the sheik was acquitted and found not guilty because he said there was no evidence that the tape had been tampered with or not. The tape showed the grain dealer being hit with a board with nails in it, electrocuted with cattle prods, burned with a cigarette lighter on his genitals, and threatened to be shot. He had salt poured into his wounds, and he was ran over repeatedly by an SUV. This man was not named and is surprisingly still alive. It saddens me to know that that one of the profound rulers of this country would do such an act that goes completely against their constitution. Keep in mind that there has been more incidents like these that have been brought to the public eye, and probably even more that haven't been. To me and my organization, economic sanctions seems to be a really good idea as a punishment for the United Arab Emirates. For the violations of the Constitution, if you see what wrong the UAE has done, you will vote yes for economic sanctions. Thank you again for allowing me to speak today.
First of all, I would like to welcome all of the countries in the Middle East united here today. To discuss a major problem in the country of Iran. I would also like to thank you for allowing me to have this honor of addressing you about the problems in Iran. My name is Sierra Bean, and I'm a representative of the Human Rights Watch. I hope that after hearing my words, you will unite with me to the point of these facts of Iran's government. And if necessary, we will give Iran economic sanctions. People have been violating and taking away rights promised to that country. If some of you have gathered here today thinking that every country is perfect and that there's nothing to be done about this, you're wrong. I have completed research and looked deep into what Iran is doing and found laws that are being broken and being violated. To begin with, I would like to present you with evidence that my team and I have accumulated from our research about torture in Iran. A report says that an 81-year-old Hagamesh Shandahai was tortured many times. First, he was struck hard in the left eye and was deprived of his sight. After the second day, he had regained some vision, but still had disability with his sight. Further on in the assault, they placed him on top of a table and tightened a rope around his neck. They told him that he was soon to be executed. They pulled the table out from underneath him, and as he fell, he realized that he was not connected to anything, that the rope was not attached. When he fell, as he hit the ground, he instantly collapsed and lost consciousness. When he awoke, they had urinated and even vomited on him. They put him in a room along with a rope, knives, and other weapons. These were intended to drive him to suicide, but still this brave person pushed on. And sadly, after surviving all of this unjust torture, Mr. Hagamesh unfortunately lost his life. Another report of torture was on August 19, 2010. My organization found that authorities in Huron prison in Ajvez had prohibited Al-Wafaz Abanindi Nazar from leaving his cell. He had been previously cleared to leave his cell for medical treatment in the prison's infirmary. Al-Wafaz was affected greatly by this and suffered for their cruel punishment. This goes against the laws for saying that no cruel punishment will be given unless medical care is also provided. Once again, this shows a heartless effort in abiding by their laws. Now let's move on. The last piece of evidence that I brought here today is one found in a 2010 report on Iran. This will be told in modified perspective of a journalist who was an eyewitness to the event. 3 female demonstrators were coming towards a bus that our journalist was on. The bus driver let the 3 women on and went back to driving. Later, Bajai forces in civilian clothing boarded the bus. They were each carrying brutal weapons. As the Bajai forces first started beating up the driver, they also hit metal parts of the bus, making many noises, and people in panic started to cause larger commotion on the bus. The Bajai forces were hitting randomly, and all you could hear was the crying and the screaming of the people around you. And all they could see were pools of blood slowly expanding towards them. After they realized that this journalist was Norwegian, they dragged him off the bus and pushed him against a wall.